So I'm going to do something that is rarely done in talk radio or any other media format. I'm going to use the occasion, and it's the perfect occasion, of the upcoming Obama State of the Union address to contrast what's going on in this country between those of us who believe in this society and liberty and those who apparently do not. And I know you're going to be upset watching Obama. I know you're going to be frustrated and furious. And I'm trying to prepare you for this. So you are, in fact, more than that. That is a rational response, by the way, to somebody who's a serial liar and a demagogue. But we also need to know more. And I started this process yesterday, and I'm going to, in much earnest, deal with this today. We already know what the president's going to say. He's going to go on and on about new entitlements, new government programs. He's going to upset you by attacking the individual, the industrious, the successful, the independent. He will call them the rich. He'll talk about fair this, fair that. It's poll tested. And so he's going to abuse the language. He's going to use language that has nothing to do with what he's doing to try and appeal to millions and millions of Americans. We already know this. He's already told us he's going to do this, and yesterday I played audio of him preparing his supporters for this. Well, he can prepare his supporters for whatever he wants. I want to prepare you, the American people, for not only dealing with it, but dealing with it after the speech and dealing with it tomorrow, because it is crucial. It is crucial that you be the folks who are carrying the message. And so I want to get into a little of this with you, some serious information, some serious thinking, and a lot of facts. And yes, it's out of Ameritopia, and that's why I wrote the book, so you would be prepared for moments like this. And so we don't have to roll up in a fetal position in the corner and say, woe is me. Instead, we say, you know what? Not only am I going to confront this, I've got arguments against this. So let's get started. In 1908, as president of Princeton University, prior to ascending to the Oval Office in 1913, Woodrow Wilson authored a treatise titled Constitutional Government in the United States. And what's interesting about this is, well, he claims to be writing about or reading about the Constitution. He is actually attacking it, as well as the Declaration. Why do we need to talk even slightly about Woodrow Wilson? Because, among others, he has laid the foundation for what Obama is saying today and what our government has become. And I want you to hear his words, in addition to mine, but his. He asserted in 1908, quote, no doubt a great deal of nonsense has been talked about the inalienable rights of the individual, and a great deal that was mere vague sentiment and pleasing speculation has been put forward as fundamental principles. So he dismisses the Declaration of Independence and individual sovereignty, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of every single individual. He dismisses it. He goes on to say, political liberty consists in the best practicable adjustment between the power of the government and the privilege of the individual. You got that? They're not inalienable rights. It's a privilege. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a privilege, not an unalienable right. And he says the freedom to alter the adjustment, is as important as the adjustment itself for the ease and progress of affairs and the commitment of the citizen. Adjust what? He means the freedom of the government to seize aspects of your liberty, of your unalienable rights, is compelled if we're to have a more perfect society. You thought I was joking yesterday. I was not. Now, Wilson also proclaimed the president is at liberty, both in law and conscience, to be as big a man as he can. His capacity will set the limit, and if Congress be overborne by him, it will be no fault of the makers of the Constitution. It will be from no lack of constitutional power on its part, but only because the president has the nation behind him and Congress has not. And you're going to see this on full display at the State of the Union speech tonight. Basically, any dictator could say what Wilson said there in 1908 before ascending to the presidency. He said more. He said the process of formal amendment of the Constitution was made so difficult by the provisions of the Constitution itself that it has seldom been feasible to use it. And the difficulty of formal amendment has undoubtedly made the courts more liberal, not to say more lax, in their interpretation than they would otherwise have been. The whole business of adaptation has been theirs, and they have undertaken it with open minds, sometimes even with boldness and a touch of audacity. So there he is, cheering on and supporting a judicial oligarchy on top of an imperial presidency. That Constitution is just too difficult to amend. So the courts will amend it. He said, undoubtedly, the powers of the federal government have even grown enormously. This is over 100 years ago, since the creation of the government, and they have grown for the most part without amendment of the Constitution. But they have grown in almost every instance by a process which must be regarded as perfectly normal and legitimate. The Constitution cannot be regarded as a mere legal document to be read as a will or contract would be. It must, of necessity of the case, be a vehicle of life. As the life of the nation changes, so must the interpretation of the Constitution, which contains its change, by a nice adjustment determined not by the original intention of those who drew the paper, but by the exigencies and the new aspects of life itself. There he is arguing for a lawless government, where the Constitution is not stable, it's not permanent, it's not fixed, it is subject to political expediency. That is Woodrow Wilson. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Barack Obama, and it will be him speaking tonight at the State of the Union. But I've got more. In 1944, if we can jump ahead over 30 years, FDR gave one of his many State of the Union speeches. And he embraced this Wilsonian notion, and he took it a step further. He said, in our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of the station, race, or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of the nation. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return, which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home, to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, and the right to a good education. Now, these aren't rights. The government can't produce these things. These are tyrannies disguised. By dominating the individual's property, the utopian dominates the individual's labor. By dominating the individual's labor, he dominates the individual. Now, these utopian promises are not going to be provided, certainly not by the government. The old Soviet Constitution sounded very much like what Franklin Roosevelt was peddling, and will sound very much like what Obama will be peddling tonight. Article 118 of the old Soviet Constitution. Citizens have the right to work, are guaranteed the right to employment and payment for their work in accordance with its quantity and quality. Citizens of the USSR have the right to rest and leisure. The institution of annual vacations with full pay for workers and employees, and the provision of a wide network of sanatoria, rest homes, clubs for the accommodation of the working people. Oh, paradise is so sweet. The Soviet Article 120 of the Constitution, citizens of the USSR have the right to maintenance in old age and also in case of sickness or loss of capacity to work. An extensive development of social insurance of workers and employees at state expense, free medical service for the working people, and the provision of a wide network of health resorts. Article 121 of the old Soviet Constitution, citizens have the right to education. And this right is ensured by universal compulsory elementary education, by education including higher education, free of charge, by the system of state stipends for the overwhelming majority of students in the universities and colleges. The old Soviet Constitution, and it goes on and on. That's why I wrote this book, Ameritopia, to expose what's going on in our own country today. Now, I have to take a break, but I've only just begun. I am already providing the response to Barack Obama's State of the Union speech, which will be delivered in a couple of hours, but the response I am delivering will help you get through it.
Mark Levin.